Check out the Andy Hoops podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Episode 3 is released where I talk about the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns rebuilding their team over the last couple years, and how their rebuild was so different. The 2019 playoffs are just around the corner, and it's about time we get things rolling. Over the course of the season, there's been a ton of different storylines, some great rivalries, some interactions between players and fans. All of this would make for some amazing potential matchups. In this video, we're going to take a look at the 10 playoff matchups that we need to see. Hopefully these will happen at some point in the playoffs. Also, I'm not going to be including any finals matchups. I'll only be talking about matchups in the West and the East. Alright, without further ado, let's get started. Number 10, the Blazers and Rockets. These two teams have a rivalry that goes back a long time. It almost seems like in every era, both of them are trying to contend at the same time. From Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon to Brandon Roy, LaMarcus Aldridge, T-Mac and Yao. And then in 2014, Damian Lillard hits one of the greatest series-winning buzzer beaters in NBA history. Now, it's very likely they'll play each other again this year, maybe even in the first round, the 4-5 matchup. My pick to win this series would have to be the Rockets. I mean, they had a slow start to the season, but they finally hit their stride. I still believe that they're the second best team in the Western Conference when everybody's healthy. Number 9, the Nets and Celtics. Remember that horrendous trade back in 2013? You know, the one with Billy King basically trading away 4 future first-round picks for a bunch of senior citizens who all left the team after 1 year. Of course, we all remember it. But now, 6 years later in 2019, the Nets are back, surprisingly. I don't think many fans thought that they would be back in the playoffs this early, as that disaster of a trade left them with no assets whatsoever. But slowly and surely, they were able to build a good team with late first-round picks, like Rondé Hollis-Jefferson or Caris LeVert. Great free agent signings like Spencer Dinwiddie and Joe Harris, and of course a great trade to acquire D'Angelo Russell, who had the potential to become a star in Los Angeles, but now he actually is a star. GM Sean Marks has been doing a fantastic job rebuilding the team. The Celtics, on the other hand, they kinda underachieved. At least, well, they're not doing as well as everyone thought they would. A bunch of personalities that don't seem to mesh, a lot of guys playing for their next contracts, and a bunch of young guys who wish they were getting more shots. However, they're still the superior team. Perhaps they could meet in the first round, maybe a 3-6 matchup is possible, but the Celtics have to make up some ground for the 3rd seed. Number 8, the Pistons vs the Raptors. Another matchup with quite a bit of history between them. Shortly after Dwayne Casey won Coach of the Year and got fired, the Pistons swooped in and signed him to a 5-year contract. So far, they've had 2 very tight games in the regular season. It came down to the wire both times, with the Pistons winning in Toronto off a game winner by Reggie Bullock. Then the Raptors won in Detroit in overtime a couple months later. This series will also be interesting because it'll probably feel like every game is a home game for the Raptors. Detroit's only a 3-hour drive from Toronto, and many Raptors fans make the trip down there to watch their team play. This is a series that will most likely happen. Right now, the Raptors are firmly holding the number 2 seed, while the Pistons are number 7, although that could change. Number 7, the Celtics vs the Sixers. Boston vs Philly. Nothing else to say here. It's a rivalry that spans across all major sports. Last year, without Kyrie or Hayward, the Celtics were able to beat the Sixers convincingly in 5 games. But this year, it's a whole different story. I talked about the uneasiness surrounding the Celtics earlier. The Sixers, though, their starting lineup is stacked. With trades that got them Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris, they now have 4 All-Stars or borderline All-Stars on their team. However, we all talk about the Celtics underachieving, but to be fair, even the Sixers aren't doing too hot. I mean, they're still fighting for the 3rd spot with the Indiana Pacers, even though Oladipo is injured. And the Pacers have had a ridiculous schedule in the second half of the season too. It's crazy to think that the Celtics and Sixers have been in the conversation as championship contenders, yet they could possibly play each other in the first round. Number 6, the Thunder vs the Jazz. If anything, Utah is the perfect example of, well, experience might not be a huge deal after all. Last year, the young Jazz team surprisingly defeated the playoff-tested Thunder. Very few thought the Thunder would lose the series, but they did. However, this season, the Thunder made it known that they want revenge. They swept them in the regular season matchups 4-0. All those games were still very close though, and honestly, this playoff series could go either way. And we might get surprised again, who knows? Also, with the interactions between Westbrook and some Jazz fans, it definitely adds more fuel to this rivalry. Number 5, the Warriors vs the Nuggets. If these two were to play each other, it'll have to be in the conference finals. We'll see a rising young team like the Nuggets, who, according to Basketball Reference, is the 5th youngest team in the league, with an average age younger than 25. That's crazy. To me, it seems like the Nuggets are what the Warriors were 6 years ago. A young, promising team that all of a sudden made a gigantic jump and shocked everybody. The problem is, both teams will have a rough time making it to the conference finals. The Warriors, obviously are more likely to get there, but for the young, inexperienced Nuggets, it'll be tough. They might even face the Spurs in the first round. This will be a huge test. Only 2 or 3 players on the team have playoff experience. But after seeing the young Jazz beat OKC last year, anything could happen. Number 4, the Bucks vs the Sixers. Historically, the Bucks and Sixers have had their fair share of playoff battles. In the 1980s with Dr. J, Moses Malone, Sidney Moncrief. Then also in 2001 where they met in a tough 7-game series in the conference finals, where the Sixers came out victorious but not without some controversy. Now, with 2 young squads, they're ready to duke it out again, a matchup between 2 of the brightest young stars in the league. This will likely be a second-round matchup, assuming that the Sixers do make it out of the first round. It's not 100% gonna happen. And honestly, if you're the 4th or 5th seed in the East this year, it's one of the hardest playoff brackets in NBA history. Assuming the Sixers and Celtics are the 4th and 5th seed, whoever wins will probably have to play the Bucks in the second round. Then probably the Raptors in the conference finals, then whoever comes out of the West. That's a crazy bracket. Number 3, the Thunder vs the Warriors. Come on, we've been waiting for this to happen for years. The last time these two faced each other in the playoffs was in 2016, and you guys know how that turned out. Now, after a couple years of retooling their team and trying to figure it out, OKC is the best they've been since Kevin Durant left. Similar to the Houston Rockets, the Thunder tried to build their team to counter Golden State, but they do it defensively. They got a bunch of long, super athletic guys, all of whom are good defenders who could play the passing lanes and disrupt the Warriors' offense. They could all switch onto different players and not have to worry about getting a mismatch. Turnovers for the Warriors have been a problem over the years, and it certainly doesn't help when they face a team that leads the league in steals and deflections like the Thunder. As a team, the Thunder average nearly 10 steals a game. If, by any chance, the Warriors do lose to them, maybe Kevin Durant will reconsider coming back to OKC. Number 2, the Rockets vs the Warriors. The reason I put this series ahead of the Thunder and Warriors is because, well, I think out of every other team in the league, the Rockets have the best chance of beating them. That makes this series more exciting to watch. It was super close last year, and if Chris Paul did not get hurt, we might have seen a different champion. This season, it's obviously different, with the Warriors getting DeMarcus Cousins and the Rockets adding a couple of more role players, and James Harden is playing the best basketball of his life. Throughout the season, the Rockets went 3-1 against the Warriors. In the 3 wins, it always looked like the Rockets were better. I mean, their whole game plan was running ISOs for James Harden. But it worked because it's so hard to defend him when he's surrounded by shooters. The question is, will it work in the playoffs? Statistically, Harden's shooting splits plummet in the playoffs. In his past 2 playoff runs, he shot less than 41% from the field and less than 30% from 3. This could be a potential second-round matchup, and it'll be a great series, again. Number 1, the Bucks vs the Raptors. The 2 top dogs in the East. Everyone's excited to see this matchup, Giannis vs Kawhi. There's a lot at stake for both teams, but mainly the Raptors. In Kawhi's situation right now, he seems to really enjoy Toronto, and his decision over the summer could change the entire future of the team. As many speculated before the season started, it all comes down to how well the Raptors actually do. How far can they make it? Some people assume that if they get knocked out before the finals, Kawhi could leave. But we don't know that because people were saying the same thing about Paul George after OKC lost in the first round. He still stayed. The Bucks, on the surface, it looks like there's nothing that can go wrong. Win or lose, at least they faced the Raptors, which means they made it very far into the playoffs. But the outcome is more important than people think. Malcolm Brogdon, Brook Lopez, Nikola Mirotic, and possibly Chris Middleton if he rejects his player option. All of them will be free agents over the summer. Their success in the playoffs will determine who the Bucks will keep and who they will let go, because they won't have room for all of them. Anyway, this is definitely my #1 matchup to watch. Both teams just play amazing basketball. And that's all, folks. Those were my top 10 playoff matchups that we need to see. Let me know your thoughts and which ones do you want to see the most? Or did I leave one out that others would love to see? Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.